So let's get started. So this presentation is an introduction to CTF events or capture the flag. And real quick, we're going to start off with a little bit of a questionnaire because some people may know the answer to these and some might not. By raise of hands, who has heard of CTF or capture the flag in the context of hacking? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, fair number of you. Okay. All right, who has played a CTF or another cybersecurity competition? I saw a hand. Is it? Yep, you've played. Okay, one. Okay. I'm guessing the last one doesn't apply then. Okay, hang on. Presentation's not being helpful. Let's move this here. And who keeps track of the global CTF time leaderboard and spends every weekend CTFing?
Oh, I'm so down.
You're like, I don't do it yet, but I like the sound of it. Okay, cool. I like that attitude. Okay. So
I am so glad you got the my group team.
is that
You are awesome.
okay? So for all the rest of us, CTF stands for Capture the Flag, and it's kind of a computer security related challenge where typically the format is there's an object to obtain and submit as a flag for points. Usually this is a string that looks kind of like an MD5 hash if you're familiar with that, what it looks like. You might see similar hashes in, like, if you've ever looked inside the shadow file on a Linux system, if you've taken like AT 1500, I think they talk 1510, I think they talk about those there. So that might be representative of a flag, or sometimes they've got some quirk or punner in them, and sometimes they're arranged in LeetSpeak format because that's fun. But the end idea of trying to accomplish a computer security related challenge and then submit the goal of that for points is kind of what makes up a CTF. So next up, little bit of history on that. Well, actually, first, types of CTFs. Yes, that's where we're at here. So first off, we've got Jeopardy. So Jeopardy board style. Typically what this is going to look like is you've got a game board that looks kind of like a Jeopardy board, hence the name. You've got a series of individual challenges. These tend to be the most common variety because they're fairly easy to set up and to maintain. So if you go look for CTFs, this is probably mostly what you're going to find. We also have attack and defense. These are where challenges are set up a little different. Instead of having a central set of challenges that's hosted by the organizers of the CTF, each team is responsible for hosting challenges provided by the organizers. They then have two jobs. One is they want to attack the opposing team's challenges that they're hosting and steal flags. And two, they want to patch the bugs that make their challenges exploitable so they can defend their system and thus not lose points. So you kind of get all the elements of a Jeopardy plus a little bit more spice in having to deal with some different things. And then we've got other competitions. We've got war games. We've got network defense. We'll talk a little bit about those right off the bat. As this rotates around, yep, Jeopardy style, offensive mostly, web, binary exploitation. I'm not liking how my presentation is rotating between slides. Let's see if I can try that. Okay, attack and defense. This is kind of a little bit of a diagram of what it would look like, where you've got a central kind of router switch and then teams on their individual boxes. Common CTF you'll hear this associated with is DEF CON Finals. If you're familiar with the DEF CON Hacking Cybersecurity Conference, takes place annually in Las Vegas. It's cool. You should come hang out next year. The finals for this event are traditionally in an attack and defense style. There's other ones, but this is probably the big main one. If there were to be something that was considered maybe the equivalent of the Olympics of CTF, this would be it, DEF CON Finals. Okay, we'll hit that. All right, so this is an example of the network defense style CTF. And that's referring to CCDC and lockdown, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. This is kind of like the attack and defense CTF, but you don't get to attack. You just get to defend. Yeah, it's not quite as fun. Um, but there's still people attacking. So you still have to try to defend the network. You've got to maintain services. And instead of having flags, you have service checks, which is where automated scripts, typically run by the organizers, will go and check your various machines because you're usually having multiple boxes that you need to manage, and make sure that they're providing services. The scenario is generally that you're the network and security team for some kind of business, and you're supposed to keep their forward and internal services running so that, like, say their website's up so people can order pizza, and the internal communication channels are running so that the executives can email back and forth. um, Very important. This diagram right here, network topology diagram, you might struggle to read it. It may or may not be because it's on the slide. Is from a lockdown competition that we participated in last spring. That was oddly enough, a pizza company. And so you can see we had a diagram here that had a bunch of different networks, and we didn't really know what we were going to be looking at once we finally got there, because you can see this was marked as being old, and there were pizza sauce stains on it. So that was a little bit of an adventure when we got there, of trying to figure out what was actually on the network and what did we need to maintain. Still,
Is that what they give you?
yep, we got that in advance of the competition. Yep. CCDC, your diagram, one CCDC I computed, and the diagram we got was a bit nicer, but there was also a note of that, like, this network diagram might not be final, your actual environment may vary. So, yeah, you can't totally trust those. But the packet includes some more description about, like, the company, and gives you a little bit of an idea of the kind of services you're going to be dealing with. All right, so you might ask, how do I find CTFs? Well, one really good place to check right off the bat is CTF Time, ctftime.org, which has a whole host of them. It's fairly typical where if a CTF is running, at least as far as the Jeopardy and attack and defense style CTFs, they get posted there. Not every one of them, but 98% of them. And then along with that, because we like competition, the result is that organizers can also, like, upload scoreboards and stuff after the event. And so you have not just your list of upcoming events, but you've also got teams. You've got a global leaderboard that resets every year. And you can also use that as a place to find write-ups for past events or post write-ups for past events as well. All right, now war games. War games are a little bit different. War games are something that, instead of being confined to a specific time period, like typically a weekend in the case of a Jeopardy or attack defense CTF, maybe an afternoon for network defense, they're instead running all the time. You can find a whole bunch of these over at github.com Zardis/wargame-nexus. He's also a really cool dude and is involved in this first one right here called Pwn College, that's focused around binary exploitation. This one in particular is neat because it's not just a war game platform, but is also built around a class at Arizona State University, and all of the lectures and Q&As and everything for that class are streamed and made publicly available to everyone intentionally. So you don't have to go to Arizona State University to take this class, which is really cool. Another one would be XSS Game. We've also got Crypto Hack, which focuses around cryptography. There is Alert to Win. That one's, I think, focused around XSS and JavaScript. Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, Over the Wire. Whoop. Over the Wire is pretty good. And let's go. Okay, and basically a whole lot more that I couldn't fit here on the slide. If you want to read more about them, you can go check out over here. Oh, Rapintorium. That one's also binary exploitation focused. Okay, now, why should you play CTFs? Well, first off, I'm going to say start with number 2. I think they're fun. You can also learn a lot of new things. This diagram over here is a meme. It's a CTF iceberg. Talks about playing CTFs for fun or learning, and then goes into a various bunch of CTF tactics that are various levels of cursed. Don't participate in some of those. Yeah.
You know, someone's probably gonna.
I like that.
It's a room habit. I can't go wrong.
Manufacturing drones and other teams.
Probably like dequalified or disqualified. Disband, probably disband. So I guess a fourth one that's not listed here under playing CTFs is you can end up with some really high quality memes. Okay, and then third is networking. This one kind of your mileage may vary, but as you play CTFs, you get to know other people. Sometimes they're people here, right? Hopefully I'm going to convince a whole bunch of you to come play CTFs. So you get to know the rest of us. Cool. But you also get to know people all over the world through playing CTFs. I've got people that I know from all over the US, India, Singapore, over in the UK, other parts of Europe. And the cool thing about that is that's a whole lot of networking. And then perhaps later on at some point when you're job hunting, you might know someone that works at such and such cybersecurity company, or they might reach out to you and say, hey, I've played CTFs a couple times with you, or I know you're involved in this CTF stuff. We've got a job opening. You're interested in applying. So maybe based on a true story. All right. Okay, so point of that is Utah Valley, I'm starting up kind of a CTF team. We've played some of the attack and defense style stuff traditionally. CCDC has been a big one. We did Lockdown for kind of the last two, I think. But I'd like to start hitting more of those Jeopardy style, eventually the attack and defense stuff. And so we've developed a team called Low Orbit Irony Cannon, or maybe Low Orbit Ironic Cannon. There was a little bit of like controversy over the name, but I figured it abbreviated the same, so it's mostly good. We're shooting to be able to play roughly every week, every other weekend. We don't want to overburden people. We also understand that everyone here has homework. Everyone probably has jobs. We don't want this to be that you only do CTF and then the rest of your life just kind of burns and goes up in smoke, as much as we might joke about that. And also beginners welcome. It's not really possible to drag people down. The only Yep.
Only for a good.
Right. And the only way to really improve, so far in my experience and talking with lots of other people, is to play CTFs. So don't look at this as like, you know what, that CTF thing sounds cool. I'll do that in 2 years when I'm good. No. Start playing now, and then in 2 years, you will be good. Yep, exactly. So, I think that was the last one of those. All right, so we're going to run over to Pika CTF in just a moment, but before we do that, are there any questions? Yeah. I think there was one that I heard about that people wanted us to host some infrastructure for, something about a conference being held here at the university. That's the one that I know about. I know we're working on that. Progress there was like getting back into the club environment successfully 2 weeks ago for me because I hadn't been able to log in, and started designing on those machines. If you are interested in that, if that sounds like something you want to do, again, beginners welcome. Want to get people involved. It's the only way they're going to learn. Drop onto the club Discord server. You can find a link off the Student Hub. There's also one on uvucsc.org. And from there, there'll be a link to the Discord. You can join there. There's also a Slack you can message there. I try to drop in there, but I'm most active on the Discord. Yep. Yeah, still doing. Like, honestly, where I've gotten a lot into IT more and computer stuff over the last several years has been playing CTFs. It's a really good way to learn because I think it kind of gives you an objective and a bit of a focus. So yeah, like keep doing stuff to learn, but if you're like, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing, but this sounds cool, I want to do it, that's who we want to play. Yeah.
What's the website?
UVUC, I think .org, maybe it's .com. Let me double check.
Yeah, it's .com. Sorry.
Yep, uvucsd.com. And then join Discord right in the middle. Yeah, there's a Slack icon. We need to update the website. That's also one that's to do. If anyone wants to do web dev. All right, any other questions?
that information from the guy.
In the presentation from last week, yes.
I think from 2000 last week, it was last week.
There was someone that came and presented about kind of some volunteer opportunities related to Ukraine, and then Gabriel did a presentation on introduction to ethical hacking. Some stuff will get posted eventually on the YouTube. I ran out of bandwidth this weekend, but it's coming. Yes.
Like, is that a thing we're doing right now?
I don't know of anything official organizing at this point.
Okay, it was just an idea.
It was thrown out. Yep. Yep. Okay. Any other questions? Cool. All right. So I'm going to transition over here. And I need to move a window. So we're actually going to transition that back. And I'm going to toss this up over here. Okay. And let's go here. All right, so this is not working entirely how I want to. All right, so this is Pico CTF. This is related to a CTF that gets put on every year, originally targeted kind of towards high schoolers, which makes it really nice for getting started. And it's put on by a team that runs out of Carnegie Mellon University, if I remember right. And it's been kind of cool because there's people that started out playing CTFs and then ended up playing on that university's team. Were really successful. They were one of the teams that were competing in DEF CON finals this year, and have historically. And there's people there that started out with this kind of a thing. So I'd be like, but this is easy sauce. Okay, cool. Start small, we'll grow. So we'll talk a little bit of an introduction. So talks about practicing, focusing on solving challenges. These are from previous iterations of Pico CTF. It is structured to be like in that specific time frame. That's the event. But they've been able to have funding and stuff to keep hosting up for these year round. And so then that's kind of like that war game style thing where it's not the same kind of competitive in the same way. These scores aren't getting posted anymore to CTF time. You're not getting global leaderboard brownie points there, or fake internet points as it is. But you do get an opportunity to practice. And then this is also the same platform that they use as registration when they do have their competitions each year. So that's kind of cool. Also neat thing about this, and they talk about it right here, is there's a web shell, which this allows you to drop into, I believe, a Linux Docker container, which already has some tools installed. So again, if you're like, I don't have tooling, but I want to get started on this, they have a way that you can get started. Even if you're like, hey, I've got a Chromebook, I can't put things on this. Okay, here goes a web shell. Docker for the win. Okay, so let's see. I'm actually going to probably stop the recording